Greetings, church. Just wanted to send you a video, just update you, keep you posted on things that I'm thinking about from God's Word and things that are coming up for the church as a whole. And, I've said this before, we are sort of all things eschatology right now, and I think that's good for us. In fact, I know it is. Again, 27% of God's revelation in the scriptures is prophetic and apocalyptic in nature. So that goes to show that a steady diet of our Bible intake should have some degree of prophecy and eschatology about it. And the thing about difficult times like what we're living in now is that they inevitably point us to eschatology, and eschatology inevitably points us to Christ. And so this is a time right now where we can exult in the future coming victory and redemption to be accomplished by Jesus Christ at the end of the age. And we're living at the end of the age. And so the time is short and urgent and wonderful and glorious. There's a passage in the Psalms, Psalm 72, that I want to bring to your attention just for a second here. I think it's there's so much eschatology that we don't realize, have never realized that are actually in the Psalms. The eschatology is everywhere. The Psalms were probably formally compiled sometime between the 4th and the 2nd century BC. And at that time, there was no Davidic king on the throne. The nation was very much fragmented. The spiritual condition was very much in an appalling state. I mean, they were there in the land for the most part, but there were still lots of people, Jews who lived outside of Israel. And so things looked bleak. Things looked hopeless for them. This is during that 400-year period of silence, you remember, when there was no prophet in the land. And yet it's in that very milieu that the Psalms were compiled together in their current form. What's interesting is that the Psalms are filled with Davidic hope. They're filled with the Davidic kingdom. They're filled with these promises and guarantees and foretastes of the coming reigning Messiah who would come and establish his kingdom and make all things be the way they ought to be. And there's very few things more appropriate than days and seasons like this in life than to look at a glimpse of the future kingdom. This is from Psalm 72. And listen to the kinds of things that David prays for the future king who would come from his line and have a kingdom. Listen to the descriptions of the conditions that will take place on earth when this future king comes to reign. He says, "And let righteousness bear fruit in his days, and an abundance of peace until there is no moon. And let him," that is, let this future king, "let him rule from sea to sea and from the river until the ends of the earth." A global reign, a global kingdom. "And the coastlands will bow down before him, and his enemies will lick the dust. The kings of Tarshish and the islands shall bring presents to him. The kings of Sheba and Sava shall bring offerings to him. And all of the kings shall bow down to him, and all the nations shall serve him. For he shall deliver the needy who hopes in him, and the afflicted who has no helper." That's unbelievable, isn't it? What David just described, what he was anticipating to come in the future, was a king from his family line who would bring an abundance of righteousness and peace to all the earth, and that he would rule from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. David understood from 2 Samuel 7 that there would be a future king who would have a global, invincible kingdom who would rule all things, and so he's anticipating this. And then he goes on to say that the islands and the coastlands and the enemies will be in subjection to this king, and that kings will come and all the nations will come and they will bow down before him and bring him offerings, bring him presents, bring him plunder as the great high king. And it even goes on to say that they would bow down to him and serve him. You see, that's coming. There's no mistaking that. There's no negotiating that. That is the future reality that is coming in the future. And so now more than ever is the time to immerse ourselves in eschatology and to enjoy the foretaste of the future kingdom. See, nothing stabilizes a church better than when we feed on the fine cuisine of eternity. And so, church, this is a good season for us as we are in this period of waiting and isolation and quarantine. and as we wait for that kingdom to come. It gives us courage, it gives us perseverance, it helps sustain us in the midst of our current trials. A couple notes for you as far as things that are coming up. This Sunday, really important, we are going to have what we're calling a prayer summit. From 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. this Sunday, we are going to gather on Zoom and we're going to pray, and we're going to pray big. Yeah, we are going to pray about the mission of our church, the global mission of our church. We're going to pray not only for internal impact, but also for regional and national and even global impact. So we want to pray big because we want our church to be an epicenter of the glory of Christ, that the ripple effects of Christ's glory and power are felt through all the earth. And that should and must happen from our church. Churches exist not to carry on merely old but good traditions, but rather churches are called to constantly be expanding and pushing the needle forward for the Great Commission. So gather with us this Sunday, 5 p.m., and we're going to pray, and we're going to pray big, and we're going to plead with Christ to use Christ Community Church as an instrument to advance the Great Commission. The second thing I want to say is I want to ask you to pray specifically for the elders. As you know, Governor Abbot has come out with sort of some guidelines and protocols as far as how a church can do gradual re-entry to meeting together. This is great news. We are not far, I think, from convening together again as a church. I mean, maybe just even a matter of weeks, and that's very exciting. The elders still need some time to talk about this formally, and yet the legal go-ahead to begin meeting has been issued, and so that's great news. Now, what that looks like differs from church to church, from congregation to congregation, and so we want to be mindful of that. So I would just ask that you would pray for the elders about that, and that you would help us be wise and thoughtful. It's going to take some planning. It's going to take some real navigating. There's kind of some thoughtful things and some moving parts that we're going to have to be in consideration of as we forge ahead and begin meeting in the next month or so. One thing that also I want you to pray about, and the elders will pray about this too, is, again, that as we do this gradual reentry, there's going to be a spectrum of people in our church who are going to have different perspectives about this reentry. Some are going to be like all for it and be like, why didn't we start meeting 2 months ago? And then there's going to be other people who are going to feel very concerned and very conservative in their stance and hesitant to re-engage and meet together again as a church. So there's coming very soon for our church, there's going to be great differences of opinion on when and how and why we should reconvene as a church. And what this is going to require of us as a church more than ever is grace. This is going to require grace of us as a church. And so please, I plead with you to be asking God for grace, to have compassion, to be objective as people are going to have differing perspectives. Congregation members are going to have different perspectives on how and when we should reconvene and re-engage and re-enter meeting together as a church. It's just going to require grace. It's going to require patience. Pray for the elders. This is our first rodeo with a plague, so we don't know. We've never been through this before. We have no experience from which to draw. And so we would appreciate your prayers for biblical wisdom to shepherd you. And again, we want to be safe. We want to care for you. What we want is your spiritual thriving and also your safety as well. So please be in prayer for that. And we will be in touch very soon with regard to what that looks like and when that's going to happen. Okay? Bottom line, I can't wait to see you. I don't know what that first Sunday is going to be like, but I don't know about you, but I think we should very, very much make that a celebration as much as we can, as much as wisdom would permit. I think that would be so good, and it will be great to meet together. But church, we are on a mission. We are a church with a mission, a church that has a destination. Our mission is the Great Commission. Our destination is the kingdom. And these two realities pull us and fill us with great urgency and expectation and anticipation that Christ is going to work and that he is working even as we speak. So, church, praying for you, love you, care for you. Please do not hesitate at all to let us know how we can serve you better. Okay? We'll see you Sunday morning through YouTube for the service. See you then.